Okay, so now we're getting into sex-linked. A sex-linked gene is one that is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's linked or connected to one of the sex chromosomes. Most of the time, we're going to be the X chromosome just because the Y is so small. It usually doesn't carry genes that are that important. So what comes into play with the sex-linked is whether or not it's a boy or girl kind of determines whether or not, or has an influence on whether or not it's going to have a trait, especially when we talk about dominant and recessive. If a boy only gets one X, he only needs one recessive gene to have a certain trait. So understanding the XY and the capital letters are going to be important here. So the first thing I'm looking at here is it says, what are the sexes and eye colors of flies with the following genotype? If we go up here, it says red is dominant to white. So if red is dominant to white and it's pure dominant recessive, we're looking at big R, little r. So when I look at these problems, I'm going to look at the first one and I'm going to see first that this is a female because it's double X. So I'm going to put female here because it asks for the sex. And then I'm going to look at the letters and I see it has a big R and a little r. So it is heterozygous. But since red is dominant to white, the eyes are going to be red. But if we skip down to this one here, XY, so this is a male, and this is where the sex link comes in. He only has one X, so he's only going to get one, either a capital or lowercase. He doesn't get that second one to kind of offset with a dominant recessive, but lucky for him, he has a capital R, which is the dominant trait, so again, he's going to have red eyes. If we skip down to part B, it's kind of the reverse for you to practice doing the letters. Notice how it's written with the trait kind of as an exponent. So it says, what are the genotypes of these flies? So it's asking for the letter convention. So first, are they male or female? So I see the first one says white-eyed male. Well, I know he's going to be XY because he's a male. And then I'm going to go up and say that white is recessive to red. So in order for him to have a recessive white eye, he just needs an X with a lowercase r. Nothing goes on the Y because nothing's being carried on the Y. And for the one on the bottom of that, it says a female, so I know it's XX. And she's also white-eyed, but for her to get white-eyed, because white is recessive, she needs to be homozygous recessive. So that's where we get into the sex length, where it's less likely, usually always, for females to have the trait because they get 2 chances at a letter where the males only get 1. And now we get to part C, which is kind of the Punnett square part. It says show a cross of a white-eyed female with a red-eyed male and then give the genotype and phenotype. So again, I'm always going to start with the parents. So I have a white-eyed female. So I know she's XX because it's a female. And I'm going to go back to the top and I see that it says red is dominant to white. So the only way for the female to have white eyes is if she's double homozygous, little r, little r. And then she is going to be crossed with a red-eyed male. So because he's a male, I know it's XY. Red is dominant, so we're going to have a capital R there. Again, nothing on the Y. It's not carried on the Y, it's carried on the X. I'm going to make my Punnett square. So this is like normal, just like we've been doing all along. I'm going to put my parents there. And then again, I'm going to fill out top side. Don't forget your conventions with the capital letters go first. And then obviously the X's go before the Y's. Okay. Then again, don't forget your final question. What are they asking for? They're asking for the phenotype and genotype. So I'm going to label that. So the pheno is what it looks like. And here's where it gets a little tricky. What it looks like also kind of depends on the sex. So, yes, I have 2 red-eyed females. And then I have 2 white-eyed males. But for example, let's say there was 1 white-eyed, 1 red-eyed. You'd have to talk about those differently. But in this case, I have 2 red-eyed females, 2 white-eyed males for a simplification of 1 to 1. And then actually my genotype is the same. So again, you need to kind of pay attention to the sex of these problems when you're giving the genotype and phenotype.